In the dark of the night, a city in despair, whispers in the alley, secrets fill the air. A shattered planet where the truth is hard to find, mysteries unraveling, leaving scars behind. Shattered planet where the shadows breed, crimes unsolved, a never-ending need. Rocking the headlines, the stories untold. Welcome to the chaos, the darkness unfolds.
Reform UK Deputy Leader Richard Tice says that the greatest scam is about to be imposed on the UK after the country agreed a trade deal with India. It will result in tens of thousands of low-skilled Indian workers coming to the UK.
A trade deal that Keir Starmer has done with India, which apparently makes it better. I said this morning he's done a great deal for working people, and unfortunately it's the working people of India that he's done a deal for.
Look, as a Brexiteer, we want sensible trade deals, but this has turned out, as we feared, not to be a fair and equitable trade deal, because what disgracefully the government didn't mention in their statement in the House of Commons yesterday was anything to do with the movement of people.
Yeah.
And it turns out that Indian workers coming to work in the UK won't have to pay any national insurance on the employer, nor will the employer. So guess what? If an employer in the UK can suddenly employ an Indian worker coming over and save themselves 15% national insurance, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to work out what some employers are going to do. Here's what's really going to happen. You're going to have unscrupulous agencies set up by Indian entrepreneurs claiming to have an office in Delhi, claiming to have an office somewhere like Peterborough or somewhere else in the UK, and they will say that they've got all these employees in India, and they're coming to work for placements in the UK. There is the greatest scam is about to be imposed on the UK.
They'll start up some kind of umbrella organisation, won't they?
They'll create an umbrella agency worker, and they'll say, I'm employing all these people over there, and now I'm employing them here in the UK to second them to other firms. It will result in tens and tens and tens of thousands of low-skilled Indian workers coming to the UK, suddenly claiming all sorts of extra costs and burdens on the UK system, on housing, on healthcare, and the like.
Of course.
And then they'll want dependents, and then after 3 years, because supposedly there is a 3-year cap on this, there'll be a reason to extend it.
We know very well 40,000 of people who have been claiming asylum in the last year were all people from places like India and Pakistan, where basically their visas had run out, and instead of going home, instead of being deported, they're now on the asylum bandwagon, and they'll probably be getting a free house somewhere in Britain because they were awaiting their asylum appeal. And I thought it was really interesting yesterday that the government came out with this crackdown on issuing those visas now, but only to 3 countries, Nigeria, Pakistan and Sri Lanka, not India.
And also considering there is currently a war going on between India and Pakistan, it doesn't really make sense to have more of either one here because it's going to kick off in Britain.
News just in. Starmer's just signed a trade deal with India, where he's capitulated to the Indian government so that Indian workers can come here to the UK for 3 years and not pay any national insurance. At the same time, as Starmer and Rachel Reeves are hiking national insurance for British workers. This is going to lead to more migration just at the time when mass migration is out of control, and it's going to make British businesses and British workers less competitive. When Starmer negotiates, Britain always loses out.
And yeah, we are losing out big time. GB News commentator Carol Malone has launched a scathing attack on Keir Starmer as the true cost of migrant hotels is revealed. Malone expressed outrage on the GB News as the true cost of migrant hotels is revealed. According to one newspaper, the cost of housing migrants has tripled to $4 million a day as channel crossings continue to rise. The Home Office originally calculated that the cost of the contracts would total $4.5 billion from 2019 to 2029. However, The 10-year contract with 3 private providers is apparently set to cost an estimated £15.3 billion. More than 38,000 migrants are currently being housed in hotels, while a further 66,000 are in dispersal accommodation. Carol vented her fury over the figures, saying, "How in God's name do you get it so wrong?" Keir Starmer lied about immigration to get into power. I don't know how long Starmer can limp on in this job. The lies continue, and it's only going to get worse.
Now it's going to be triple that to 15.3 billion. How in God's name do you get it so wrong? I mean, when I say who are these idiots working there, I'm not joking and insulting them. It's true. Who are they if they can't count, if they can't get these figures right? It is just, are they just idiots, or have they willfully been manipulating the figures in the past when we've seen them? Because that's what it's looking like.
And on those figures, Milo, we saw Labour MPs challenging in private meetings last night Pat McFadden, who's the Cabinet Office Minister, about benefit cuts and the winter fuel allowance.
Yeah.
People watching this paper think, they can take away the winter fuel allowance.
Yes.
They're going to take away disability benefits,
but they
can find £4 billion a year for hotels for migrants who shouldn't be here.
And this I don't know how much longer Starmer can limp on in this job, because he's clearly useless. He can't even deal with this. And he lied to us about immigration to get into power, and the lies continue, and it's only going to get worse. And so whatever that 15.3 billion is now today, with the record numbers we've had this year, that's going to get worse.
Those massive successes of reform in the council elections last week
completely
is
down
issue,
to this,
Jonathan. And
I think it's more than that. Actually, I think that it's the winter fuel payment, which was the original sin of this government, and then sort of adding to that this idea that we have to sort of cut people's benefits. A lot of those people were Labour voters, so the PIP, etc. And then, so in much the same way that the Conservatives lost the election, Labour didn't win it. Labour risks losing this. Reform is not winning this per se. They didn't start. They started obviously from a decent base the last election.
Well, they are winning it because they understand immigration. They understand the problems of this mass immigration.
I think that when you get into sort of the weeds of this migration thing, I think that it makes it much harder to make the argument about why we need to sort of house migrants and sort of pay money for that while their claims are being processed, when you've also had cuts. That's the key to it.
The Home Office took hold of the responsibility for finding asylum accommodation for 3 private companies in 2019. This is a 10-year contract with a break clause that can be activated any time from 2026. Contracts are held by Serco, Clear Springs, Ready Homes and Mears. Meanwhile, it is estimated that more than 11,500 migrants have crossed the channel in small boats so far this year. In fact, today I heard there was another 600 that came in yesterday, so that takes the total to over 12,000 migrants so far this year. The National Audit Office has also said that although only 35% of migrants were living in hotels, they actually make up 3/4 of the overall cost of asylum accommodation. Earlier this week, Carol was left furious over what she called creeping Islamisation of Britain, following the election of a pro-Gaza candidate to a council seat in Lancashire. 18-year-old Maheen Kamran won the Burnley Central East seat, which left Malone ranting on GB News as she condemned Cameron's stance on gender segregation. She ranted, "We live in a Christian country where men and women are seen as equals, and the rights and equalities that women have been hard fought for. It makes me sick to my stomach that someone is talking about segregating sexes in this country. The creeping Islamization in this country is happening in front of our eyes, and we must not tolerate it. A vile paedophile who groomed and then horrifically abused a 10-year-old girl, subjecting her to perform sex acts on his friends, has seen his sentence increased after intervention by the Solicitor General. Yusuf Kayat, 54, received a 20-year prison term in February following his conviction on a harrowing array of 17 offences at Leeds Crown Court. The court was told that from 1989 to 1992, Kayat, also known as Kosh, targeted the young girl, taking advantage of her in cars and abandoned buildings in Dewsbury and Mirfield. The predator began his heinous acts with grooming, chauffeuring the victim in his vehicle, lavishing her with presents, and supplying her with alcohol, cigarettes, and cannabis. His crimes escalated to sexual intercourse and forcing the child to engage in sexual activities with his acquaintances, often involving several men in exchange for takeaway food. Now an adult, the survivor expressed in her impact statement the lasting terror, anxiety, flashbacks, and panic attacks that she endured, labeling the impact of Kayat's actions as profound and devastating. Taking action against what was deemed an overly lenient initial punishment, the Solicitor General stepped in, resulting in the Court of Appeal increasing Kayat's imprisonment. On May the 7th, his original sentence was annulled and replaced with a lengthier term of 24 years under the unduly lenient sentence scheme. Solicitor General Lucy Rigby condemned the offender, stating, "Yusuf Kayat's crimes were abhorrent. His grooming of the victim was highly calculated, who was only 10 years old when the abuse first began, before carrying out multiple sexual offences over several years. I welcome the court's decision to increase Kayat's sentence. Today my thoughts are with Kayat's victim and her family. What a vile beast." A thug who attacked a stranger with a 10-inch zombie knife at Notting Hill Carnival, leaving his intestines hanging out, has been found guilty of attempted murder. Kamanal Spooner, then age 18, was stabbed by Romani Tuit, 19, with the giant blade on August the 26th last year in Canal Way, West London, just before 8 p.m. In a witness statement for the police, Mr. Spooner said he spent much of the day drinking with his friends and enjoying the carnival before the horrific assault unfolded. Towards the end of the day of the carnival, Mr. Spooner could hear shouting coming from somewhere and realised he was somehow in the middle of it. He then saw people fighting around him. 3 of them were quite close. They were throwing punches. He then recalls being hit in the back, and upon looking at his arm, he saw it had been cut. Then he looked down and saw that his intestines were hanging out. He put his hand over them and just ran. He cannot cast any light on why it was he would have been attacked. Mr. Tuitt, pictured here, from Walthamstow, East London, also stabbed Mr. Spooner 4 more times to the side and the back and caused a laceration to his right forearm. Officers arrested Mr. Tuitt immediately after the attack and were able to provide vital medical treatment to his victim until paramedics could reach them. Despite having his stomach sliced open, Mr. Spooner miraculously survived his injuries thanks to life-saving surgery. The zombie-style knife used, described by police as at least 10 inches in length, was recovered from the scene. Zombie style is the street name given to weapons which are over 8 inches in length and often have a serrated edge, spikes, or more than 2 sharp points. On September 24th, zombie-style knives and machetes were added to the list of prohibited weapons in the Criminal Justice Act 1988 as part of a government crackdown aiming to halve knife crime in a decade. Jurors found Mr. Tuitt guilty of attempted murder on Thursday, May the 8th, after a trial at the Old Bailey. The court previously heard that he and Mr. Spooner did not know each other. Mr. Tuitt said he was acting in self-defense, the prosecutor said, but the jury rejected his claim. There was also no evidence that Mr. Tuitt harboured any particular grievance against Mr. Spooner. Tuitt will be sentenced on June the 27th for attempted murder and for possessing a knife, a charge he'd earlier admitted. Acting Detective Inspector Sophie McLaughlin, who led the investigation, said, "This was savage and a senseless attack. The victim was very lucky to survive his injuries. Hundreds of thousands of people, including the victim in this case, go to Carnival to have a good time and enjoy the music and entertainment. Those who would choose to turn up armed with a 10-inch zombie knife clearly have no such intentions. It's thanks to the vigilance of officers on duty that day and the hard work of the team in the months since that they were able to build the case that saw Mr. Tuitt convicted at court. It's also thanks to officers' immediate medical intervention at the scene, as well as the specialist further care by paramedics, that we're talking about a conviction for attempted murder, and not worse. I hope the victim can now move forward and begin to put this experience behind him." And last month, a thug who brutally stabbed a mother to death in front of her young daughter, also with a zombie knife, at the Notting Hill Carnival the day before Mr. Tuitt's attack on Spooner, was found guilty of her murder. Innocent bystander Sher Maximin, 32, was stabbed to death with one of the illegal weapons when caught up in gang violence during the world-famous event which attracts crowds of 1 million people across the August bank holiday in West London each year. The killer, Shaquille Thiebaud, 20, had been attempting to target a man called Adji Isaac when the nightmare unfolded on August the 25th last year. Mr. Isaac managed to dodge the enormous blade as Thiebaud repeatedly tried to knife him in the stomach. But during this chaotic scene, model Miss Maximin was knocked to the floor, and as she struggled to her feet, Thibault raised the knife and deliberately stabbed her in the groin. Miss Maximin, who also worked as a clothing designer, died 6 days later from her injuries on August the 31st, having been attacked in front of a 3-year-old daughter. Thibault claimed he was trying to defend himself from Mr. Isaac and said he stabbed Miss Maximin by mistake, but the jury convicted him of murder, attempting to cause grievous bodily harm to Mr. Isaac, and having an offensive weapon, namely the zombie knife. A woman's daughter was followed the other day in Warrington Town into an Asda and then to the toilets by this man pictured. The daughter's friend took these pictures. She's not a child, but she was afraid, and she wanted to make others aware. Now I've heard that Warrington is getting more and more migrants, maybe not as many as Leeds or as London, but they're starting to come in. If you think anyone is trying to follow you, please stay in a public place. If you can, find a police officer or go into a busy shop and tell a member of staff, and they will make sure that the person following you does not come in. British Transport Police are investigating a sexual assault and have released an image of a man they would like to speak with. The incident occurred at about 9 p.m. on Saturday the 29th of March on board the 8:01 p.m. Manchester Victoria to Redcar Central train. A man sat opposite a young woman and proceeded to stare at her before sexually assaulting her. Detectives believe the man in the images may have information that could help them with their investigation. Anyone who recognises him is asked to contact the British Transport Police by texting 61016 or by calling 0800 40 50 40, quoting the reference 367 of the 30th of March. If you walk through Beeston Hill and look closely at the corners of the houses, you will likely see an array of small white, unimposing-looking cameras dotting around like barnacles on the red brick terraced homes. It's for safety, says a young resident, who fears someone coming to his house to start something, citing issues with drug addicts, gangs, and homeless people pervading the streets of the South Leeds estate. The Beeston Hill area has the worst deprivation levels in the city and is one of the most deprived in the country, according to the 2019 Index of Multiple Deprivation. It's the 38th worst area for deprivation in the UK. Beeston Hill and Hunslet Moor came out as having the highest crime rates outside the city centre, with 179 crimes reported in September, according to Police UK. That's a rate of 26.6 crimes per 1,000 people. West Yorkshire Police said drugs and street gangs are a big issue in the area and have been taking a robust approach with drugs warrants and trap house closures. The force urged worried residents to keep up a regular dialogue with them as they're keen to work with the community. Leeds City Council has said Beeston is a priority area and they focused their efforts to improve it with community engagement. The council has set up multiple projects in this goal. Father and son, Mohammed Alamin and Ryan Qureshi, 49 and 21, have a closed-circuit camera set up in their home. It's hooked up to a flat-screen monitor in the kitchen and shows multiple angles of vision outside their home. They've said this isn't uncommon. Warehouse worker Ryan said the whole estate has CCTV. Everyone has CCTV. You see cameras everywhere here. It's for safety. You've got to make sure you want to be safe. If someone comes to yours and tries to start something, then you've got CCTV there. The UK is in a very big crisis. All prices are up. People are struggling in their lives. The father of 4 loves his neighbourhood and said he was involved in getting a playground and a jungle gym installed in their local park, Brickfield Park on Lady Pitt Lane. He's now keen to have more trees planted in the area to further enhance the beautiful park and to improve the air quality. While the pair are grateful for the work Leeds City Council has done to improve the area, they feel more still needs to be done. Ryan said, the council have started doing a lot of stuff, but I think they need to tackle issues of people hanging about and doing bad things. There's a lot of crime here too. He went on, they smoke a lot of drugs and stuff like crack, all those Class A drugs. They'll smoke all them. It's not good for the community. There's a lot of homeless people next to the petrol station. You see a lot of people sleeping. Dewsbury Road, they'll be sleeping in gardens. It makes me feel sad. I think about what it would be like if I was in their position and had nowhere to go. I want to help them. Any money I have, I give to them. Corner shop Bangla Town is in the heart of Beeston Hill in Lady Pitt Lane. Owner Mohammed Babu Ahmed, 44, took over the shop about a year ago. He gave a heartfelt insight into the living conditions of the area. Mohammed said, in the night time, all over, there's people begging, lots of people sleeping rough. There's a lot of people shouting in the road and drinking. I've seen people throwing cans and bottles through windows and on the road all over. Sometimes they break into houses as well and take things, burgling. It makes me feel really bad. We report it a lot to the police. The father of 6 sometimes gets people coming into his shop, begging for food, and he just has to let them have it. Mohammed said, sometimes they'll ask for bread, a sandwich, or some little things like milk. In the community, I feel like if someone asks something from you, I feel like it's the right thing to do to help them. If I see someone who doesn't have anything, that's when I give it to him. Inspector Mark Lund, who heads the Leeds South Neighbourhood Policing Team, said, Beeston Hill is part of an inner city area that has some significant challenges around crime and antisocial behaviour, particularly the organised supply of drugs at street level. We remain firmly committed to doing everything we can alongside our partner agencies to tackle these issues and to bring those responsible to justice. We continue to take a robust approach through a range of initiatives and operations, including drug warrants, trap house closures, and other proactive work in partnership with Leeds Antisocial Behaviour Team. We're always keen to hear people's concerns and are in regular dialogue with community representatives and residents to help prioritise our work. Information from the community remains a vital element in our work to tackle drug dealing, and we urge people to pass that on to us, either directly to local officers at any of our regular contact points or anonymously through Crime Stoppers. People have the absolute right to feel safe in their area, and we will continue doing everything we can to reassure residents and root out the minority of offenders who cause the greatest amount of harm. Leeds City Council says it has invested approximately £60,000 a year into youth activities. It added that most of the housing in the area is private rented, with Leeds City Council managing approximately 900 dwellings. It added that rent arrears in this area have reduced during the last 12 months with the help of this support. It has also set up various projects to engage with the community, such as youth clubs and football teams. It had also set up problem-solving partnership group to address longer-term challenges around crime and antisocial behaviour. Councillor Mary Hartland, Executive Member for Communities, Customer Service and Customer Safety, has said, "The area in and around Beeston Hill is one which is a priority area for the Council, with significant focus support being provided. At the heart of that support is community engagement. Working in partnership with people of all ages and backgrounds, as well as stakeholders in the area, to make a difference and improve the daily lives of all residents and the local environment they share. We are very proud of this collective work and look forward to continuing to strengthen these relationships in the months and the years ahead." Deporting foreign criminals languishing in British prisons is the answer to tackling the overcrowding crisis, a Shadow Justice Minister has said. More than 10,800 foreigners are behind bars in England and Wales, equivalent to 12% of the current prison population. Yet, at HMP Wandsworth, one of the country's biggest jails, inmates from overseas make up nearly half of the total. They also account for at least a quarter of prisoners at Belmarsh, Wormwood Scrubs, Pentonville, and Risley. All five are among the 61% of jails deemed overcrowded, a situation Labour has sought to manage by releasing thousands of inmates early. Dr. Kieran Mullen, the Tory MP for Bexhill and Battle, has said the answer to tackling overcrowded prisons has been laid bare once again. The Justice Secretary, Shabina Mahmood, has a simple choice: do right by our country and deport the foreign national offenders to free up prison capacity, or continue to do the right by the criminals by releasing them onto our streets and abolishing short sentences. That this choice was even being contemplated shows you it's the same old Labour that are soft on crime, soft on criminals, and simply not fit to serve our country. A total of 10,838 foreign nationals were being held in jails across England and Wales at the end of March at a total cost of £1.2 million a day. 40% are awaiting trial, the Ministry of Justice said. Albanians make up the biggest cohort of foreign inmates overall, 1,072, followed by Poles, 748, and Romanians 688. Ministry of Justice figures show that HMP Wandsworth held 1,474 prisoners as of the end of March. 47%, or 696, hailed from outside the UK. The Freedom of Information request shows that after Brits, Poles made up the largest foreign contingent inside the Category B facility of 110. They were followed by Romanians, 81, and Albanians, 44, and Algerians, 39. Meanwhile, Albanians were the biggest cohort at HMP Belmarsh, a Category A facility housing Southport killer Axel Rudakabana and Ali Harbi Ali, who murdered MP David Amos in 2021. Current law says foreign offenders should automatically face deportation if they have been sentenced to a prison sentence of 12 months or more. However, legal challenges, particularly under the Human Rights Act, can prevent them from being sent back. The latest data shows there were 19,244 foreign offenders awaiting deportation at the end of 2024, up from 17,907 when the Conservatives left office in July. This rise came despite 3,594 offenders being deported in Labour's first 9 months in office, a 16% increase on the same period in the previous 12 months. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Phillip has previously called for the 12-month threshold for automatic deportation to be abolished. If a foreign citizen commits a crime here, we should kick them out. It's as simple as that, he said in March. Many jails with the largest share of foreign prisoners are also seriously overcrowded. HMP Wandsworth is currently home to 749 Brits, 696 foreign nationals, and 29 whose nationality has not been recorded. This gives the prison a total population of 1,474, although Ministry of Justice figures say it has only got capacity for 883. Charlie Taylor, the Chief Inspector of Prisons, has regularly warned that overcrowding fuels violence, drug use, and disorder, while harming rehabilitation efforts. Wandsworth has been slated in several damning inspections and witnessed numerous scandals, including the escape of terror suspect Daniel Khalif in 2023, and a prison guard having sex with an inmate in 2024. Some of Britain's overcrowded prisons are those dedicated specifically to holding foreign nationals, most of whom are awaiting deportation. And in this video we see some Albanians laughing and joking, recording on a phone. Why they've even got a phone in prison is beyond me, but they seem to be having a great time.
Gang, man, boys, come on. Put.
That looks more like a boys' club than a prison. The smoking vapes, recording on phones, playing music. They're having a whale of a time. They should be there to do hard time. It should be like Shawshank Redemption. Throw the fuckers in a cell, lock it, and leave them to rot. This next video comes with a warning of violence. This is not nice to watch, so please be warned. A woman in this video that originated in Ireland is attacked by an ethnic minority. She screams as he punches her repeatedly. He stamps on her head and she cries, "I'm pregnant and I'm going to die," just before she manages to escape. This is another fine example of cultural enrichment. I don't know what that was in his hands that he walked out with, quite possibly some money or something, but that poor woman. I hope that that man got caught and that justice was served, because somebody like that needs to be put down and given a proper death sentence. A Marshall Plan is needed to stop a modern-day exodus, warns a former International Development Secretary. Hundreds of millions of people will flee North Africa as migrants in search of a better life unless a massive Marshall Plan is launched to transform the region. Former International Development Secretary Sir Andrew Mitchell has warned a project comparable to the reconstruction scheme to rebuild Europe after the devastation of World War II is needed to prevent such a mass movement of people. Sir Andrew writes in a new book that illegal migration has undeniably spiralled out of control, and the public were right to be angry at the loss of control of our borders. Looking back at the summer's disastrous election results for the Conservatives, he writes, "The eye-watering costs of housing asylum seekers, together with a perceived corresponding decline in public services, such as the length of time it took to get a GP appointment, fueled the not unreasonable view that UK generosity was being meted out unchecked, and that the British people were being taken for fools. Political elites should have learned by now that we patronise voters at our peril." There is deep concern in the UK about small boat crossings, with more than 13,000 people coming to the UK this year. But Sir Andrew warns that neither sending asylum seekers to a country such as Rwanda, nor trying to smash the people smuggling gangs can solve the country's illegal migration problem. Instead, he presses for a strategic policy that addresses migration at the source, before migrants cross the Mediterranean and long before they reach Calais. He writes, "What is really needed is a massive Marshall Plan for North Africa, a carrot and stick plan involving the UK, EU, and other nations with a direct interest in that region. Otherwise, wait for hundreds of millions of feet to walk towards us in search of a better life." Sir Andrew sets out his proposals in a new book of essays on immigration, a positive contribution published by the think tank Bright Blue. Warning of the dangers of ignoring public anger, he says, we need to look no further than Trump's victory to understand the depth of the fury that marginalisation unleashes. Around Europe, the emerging patterns are similar, as narrow nationalism rears its head on the back of legitimate fears and concerns, and the establishment's failures to heed them. However, he also cautions that an array of factors are pushing people to leave their homes. Around the world, people are falling back into poverty, and the link between war, poverty, and migration from countries like Syria and Afghanistan is inescapable. The toxic mix of instability, insecurity, and climate change means the hope of a better life at home vanishes, forcing people to move. He makes the case for allowing people to apply asylum before they set foot in the UK, claiming this would save a huge amount in housing and welfare costs. It would also reduce the number of people trying to make dangerous journeys to the UK and mean more exploiters of human desperation would go out of business. The ex-Deputy Foreign Secretary writes, right now, there are a few options for people to apply for asylum legally from outside the country, meaning that the only routes available are, by definition, illegal. Creating limited legal routes would provide desperate people with an alternative to risking their lives in dinghies, and crucially, would help stop the criminal gangs who traffic them. If you want to starve out supply, take away the demand. Sir Andrew also makes a passionate defence of foreign aid, which has been cut from 0.7% of GDP and is due to fall to 0.3% from 2027. He writes, aid budgets tend to be thought of as handouts, but international development is something else entirely. Its ultimate goal is to eliminate the reasons people seek a better life on distant shores. We aim to build safer and more prosperous societies over there, so people do not need to come over here. A gang of asylum seekers who were living in a hotel raided a high-end Knightsbridge department store armed with knives and stole Hermes handbags worth more than £70,000, a court has heard. The raiders struck the Design Exchange in West London on the 20th of October 2024. Ken Duncan, a 57-year-old fruit delivery manager, was said to be the getaway driver for the heist. Duncan allegedly drove 3 of the migrants to Brixton afterwards, but told police officers in an interview he had no idea he'd assisted a robbery. The transport manager, who works delivering fruit to offices around London, was found by police with a Rambo knife and a pack of balaclavas in his car. His truck, alleged to have also carried 3 of the raiders, was discovered with bags of expensive clothes inside. Asylum seekers Tyrese James and Akeem Luchman Singh said they were forced into robbing the retail store by 2 older Caribbean men by the names of Romeo Granman, 37, and Acton Francis, 40. At Isleworth Crown Court today, Duncan's post-arrest interview with detectives was relayed to the jury. He told officers that he thought he was helping his friends drop off a few of their friends to Brixton. He described being sat there for a few minutes on Brompton Road before one of the men had driven to the location and two others jumped in his car. Duncan said he knew something was not right, but he said he was just probably ignorant. He was asked about all the bags found by police, but Duncan said he couldn't see all the bags piled up behind him. Following up, the investigator said, "Obviously, what was recovered from your vehicle was quite a few bags. I struggle to picture how you wouldn't have seen them. Could you explain that to me?" Duncan said, "Because they came from behind me. So I'm still on my phone like this, so I didn't know anything. All I saw was my doors just open. They get in and Natalie is driving off." An officer asked, "At any point did you sort of look behind you at all?" "No, because I'm just concentrating," Duncan answered. "Did you see them with masks, balaclavas, anything like that? Balaclava packets that were found. Do you know where they came from?" asked the investigator. Duncan, who was initially arrested for being in possession of an offensive weapon, was asked why his car was found with a Rambo knife inside. He reiterated that he did know why he was driving the men, but accepted that his mind did start wandering during the trip to Brixton. At the end of his interview, Duncan told the police, "I've never been involved in anything in my life. For all this to happen, and then to be told it's a robbery with a knife, I'm in shock." In a prepared statement provided after his arrest, alleged robber Lakshman Singh said he was forced by two males to burgle the Design Exchange on the 20th of October 2024. "I'm an asylum seeker from Trinidad. I had to leave Trinidad because of serious concerns about my safety. I had fears for my life, which is why I burgled the Design Exchange." Co-defendant James said in his prepared statement he was forced into committing the robbery by two extremely dangerous Caribbean males. "I am an asylum seeker because of grave concerns about my safety in Trinidad. The people who forced me are linked to my issues in Trinidad," he said. "There were genuine fears I may be subject to some serious harm unless I burgled the Design Exchange." Duncan of South Norwood, Croydon, Francis of Upper Norwood, Croydon, James of No Fixed Address, and Granham, also no fixed address, all deny aggravated burglary with intent. Lakshman Singh of No Fixed Address denies aggravated burglary with intent and possession of an offensive weapon in a public place. The trial continues. A picture now of locals outnumbering leftists at an anti-migrant hotel protest outside Potter's International Hotel in Aldershot. The locals were not consulted, did not vote for, and do not consent to undocumented illegals living in their community. They want them sent home. And be honest, if you lived near a hotel full of migrants, would you want them on your doorstep? A bombshell new report has found over 400 ISIS jihadis have returned to the UK and have avoided facing justice. Fighters for the terror group are thought to have returned after travelling to the Middle East. ISIS, also known as Daesh or IS, committed widespread campaigns of terror, murder, and rape in lands across Syria and Iraq. Now, a report has warned that none of the supporters of the group who had made their way back to the UK had been successfully prosecuted. Ahead of the Joint Committee on Human Rights, Lord Alton said, "We know that British nationals committed the most horrendous crimes in Iraq and Syria under Daesh, and we have a duty to see them brought to justice. We want to see more action from the government in identifying the perpetrators, some of whom have returned to Britain, others likely detained in camps in Syria. To date, no Daesh fighters have been successfully prosecuted for international crimes in the UK, and we find this unacceptable." He continues, "We want to see more action from the government in identifying the perpetrators, some of whom may have returned to Britain, others likely detained in camps in Syria." Responding to the report, Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick told us, "Terrorists in the Middle East are not welcome in the UK. They have forfeited their right to live here with their appalling crimes. Those that have made it back from ISIS need to be locked up and kept away from the public." A government spokesman said, "The government's priority remains maintaining the safety and security of the UK, and we are committed to achieving accountability for all victims of Daesh's crimes. We will consider the findings of this report." The report has reignited discussion about the British state's powers to strip people of their citizenship due to links with the IS. And here we see an interview with a woman who has lost her son because of that.
I'm no expert in the law, in medicine, or in the criminal justice system, but I'm fast learning that there are some major flaws within all of those that unfortunately have culminated in the loss of my son and Grace and Ian. But yes, the hospital order is just that. It's sending somebody as a patient to a hospital for treatment. There's no element of that which is penal, which is a punishment. So Callaghan has manipulated and managed to use his mental illness, which we have never disputed that he does have mental illness. You're quite right, Patrick. Who would do something like this in their right mind? Nobody would, right? It's not an act of retaliation or an accident or a moment in time. This was thoroughly planned, the same as the awful case that you've just been talking about. So it's so wrong that this lighter sentencing with no punishment can be handed down, and it happens time and time again. And indefinite doesn't mean indefinite, it means almost anything but that. 87% of indefinite hospital orders are out within 10 years and 98% within 20. So pretty much you're going to be out. Sorry, not too much.
No, but it's a good point to kind of jump in on, really, because that's the other thing, isn't it? Which is that, like, actually, conceivably, when people decide that these people are better, that they can be released. And, you know, for me, it's the precedent that this sets, right? So if you commit one of the kind of most heinous, barbaric actions, like, you know, what we saw in Nottingham there and what we very nearly saw in Marks and Spencer, no one died, fortunately. But you can find a doctor to say you're mental, and then that can be used in court, and then you find yourself in a hospital and not a prison. And this just seems to be happening more and more now.
Yeah, I think, as you alluded to, our case is sadly still very high profile in the public. But I guess the upside of that is that all of the all of the misleading information, all of the failures have been brought to the fore, and we're continuing to challenge all of them, which is why we'll end up with a public inquiry, and that's already been confirmed. And we need to ensure it's a statutory judge-led one, so that people that gave evidence which led to this outcome are held to account. We know for a fact Callaghan is in his secure unit. He is in the high secure unit. I was shocked when I read the piece about this gentleman you were talking about today. He was actually put in a medium secure unit when he then went on to attack the nurse. I mean, it's just horrific to even think about. But the reason Callaghan, who is a murderer, an ill murderer, is in the hospital is because his diagnosis was to be so thought of to be so severe that he was treatment resistant, and there was an awful lot of sway put on this in the sentencing hearing from the eminent psychiatrist who was representing the CPS, so actually prosecuting. We now have found out, following the CQC investigation and actually admissions from the Callaghan family themselves and their expose on Panorama, that he wasn't treatment resistant, which would infer that it didn't work, so he had to go to a hospital. He was actually resisting taking his treatment. We now know, thanks to his brother, who so kindly said at the end of Panorama, he's got his brother back now because he's responding to treatment, and he's actually responding to the treatment that he has been prescribed all along. This isn't the next level up that was put in front of the judge. So, yes, I guess Justice Lord Turner had no choice but to do this, but it's utterly wrong and it has to be looked at. And if it's the last thing I do on this earth, is I will stop it happening again if there's any way I can.
The most famous example of the state's use of power is Shamina Begum, who left Britain to join the group at the age of 15 in 2015. Begum was stripped of her British citizenship in 2019 over national security concerns in a high-profile case. The 25-year-old is now looking to take her case to the European Court of Human Rights after the Supreme Court blocked yet another attempt for her to return to the UK. Now, a lot of people are familiar with the Shamina Begum case, and let me tell you, we do not want her back in this country under any circumstances whatsoever. You go to fight for ISIS, you stay with ISIS. Here in a short clip, we can see an officer pointing a taser gun at an illegal migrant in Leicester who was walking the streets with a samurai sword, and the officer has had to put his foot on it to secure it. Why does a religion of peace deem it necessary to carry knives and swords? The French may not start intercepting migrant dinghies during the peak crossing months this year, Yvette Cooper has hinted. The Home Secretary said Paris will finally stop boats leaving in the next few months, and admitted we need that French action in the water to end the Channel crisis. Ms. Cooper said French laws blocking police from intercepting migrants once they are in the water are a serious problem. It comes as 300 crossed the Channel on Tuesday, less than 24 hours after 601 were detected on 10 boats, taking the total to almost 13,000 illegal immigrants so far this year. The summer months, particularly August and September, are considered the peak for people smugglers when the Channel is calmer. Home Office sources had privately been hoping Paris would begin operations to block boats in the water at the end of this month, but the Home Secretary told us, "We hope that the work that the French are doing means that they will start taking action within French waters over the next few months. I think that it is hugely important We're obviously pressing them to do that as swiftly as possible, and then the counter-terrorism powers will come in later this year. At each stage we are increasing the enforcement, the work with other countries, the work with Europol, on those gang networks, because they do spread right across Europe as well. People smugglers have adapted their tactics because they know the French police won't intercept them in the water. The crime gangs launch a boat further down the coast and pick up asylum seekers already standing in the water, with officers watching on. Ms. Cooper said, "Once everybody is in the water, the French authorities do not intervene. That is a serious problem. As soon as it's in the water, their rules mean they weren't taking action. That's a serious problem." So the UK government have been asking France to change their position for very many years, and they have now finally agreed to do so as a result of the work we've been doing with them. That is important, but it's not enforced yet. So don't get me wrong, this continues to be a really deep-rooted problem, because those criminal gangs have had 6 years to take very deep roots. But we need that French action in the waters, not just on the coast. We also need the broader counter-terrorism powers that we're bringing in. More than 12,400 migrants have crossed the English Channel so far. It came as 601 people in 10 boats made the treacherous voyage on Monday, the day Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer announced an immigration crackdown. Home Office figures show that 12,407 have crossed in 224 boats, with 1,333 arriving in May alone, and at least 300 migrants are believed to have made the crossing today. Border Force vessel Typhoon brought in a group of people this morning after it responded to 2 incidents in the channel. It set off in the early hours before making a detour, stopping mid-channel between Folkestone and Wissant. It then set off further down the channel until it stopped around 9 AM again between Lydd and Boulogne, according to satellite tracking site Marina Traffic, before heading back to Dover. Hurricane also dropped off another group of people this morning at the port's western docks. Border Force vessels Defender and Ranger were also involved in rescues. They were seen in the middle of the Dover Straits in the morning between Dover and Calais. Weather is expected to deteriorate with stronger winds picking up, which is expected to thwart further crossings. Labour's plan to end the Channel migrant crisis passed its latest Commons hurdle on Monday night, despite pleas for the government to take a tougher stance. The legislation aims to introduce new offences and counter-terror style powers to tackle people smugglers bringing migrants across the English Channel. People selling and handling boat parts suspected of being used in migrant channel crossings could face up to 14 years in prison, and the government wants to make it an offence to endanger another life during sea crossings to the UK. But Shadow Home Secretary Chris Phillips said the numbers in asylum hotels have gone up by 8,000 so far under this Labour government. Speaking of removals deterrents, I was in Berlin 4 or 5 weeks ago talking to members of the CDU party, which is now in government. The incoming German government intends to implement a removals deterrent very similar in concept to the Rwanda scheme. So other governments around the world have realised that they have to do this. It's worked in Australia, and the new German government will be doing something very similar. It is just our government who are going headlong in the opposite direction. Former Minister Esther McVey added, "The reality is, until this government gets ahead of the curve, get a spine, take the UK out of the ECHR, repeal the Human Rights Act, a law that Labour introduced to cement the ECHR in British law, reinstate the Rwanda scheme, and radically clamp down on housing and benefits, I'm afraid that immigrants will continue to come to the UK." In this video, this is fucking disgusting. Moonfish of 20 East Street Barking in London. If you know this place, give it a wide, wide berth. Never, ever shop there. It should be closed down permanently, and the person in this video jailed for trying to poison the public. Dogs will have pissed and shit on this street, and this man thinks it's acceptable to break frozen fish up by smashing it into the pavement. Take a look at this.
Unbelievable. 20 East Street Barking.
Look at that, moonfish. This is what he does with your meat. He breaks it up on the floor. Let me see, what is that? And then they're going to sell that to the members of the public.
In what world would anybody think that that is acceptable?
They're going to charge you money for that. Look at that.
Feel free to do that sort of thing in your own country and poison your own people. But here in England we have a little thing called health and safety. Now that place needs to be shut down. I hope nobody ever shops there again. Here we have a spokesman for Turning Point speaking some truths.
600 people coming here yesterday, a record level of immigration, and with over 90,000 people, a record coming here last year, we have to ask ourselves, who are they and who is supporting them? We have the left, who advocate for communism, a flavour of fascism, who wishes to segregate and divide the political classes. We have Islam, who degrades the value of women and devalues Christianity, a cultural identity which is the heritage and foundation of British society. So as we're staring at a hotel, a leisure site for British people, who is housing immigrants who last year had a rocket 1,000 incidents of sexual assault and antisocial behaviour, contributing to the Deliveroo economy and selling tax fraud, vapes, and Harry Potter merch, and whatever sweets, delects that no one goes into. So my recommendation to British patriots is to firstly buy locally. Don't support immigration. Support the parties you actually advocate for, that you align yourselves with. Secondly, be vocal against communism. The unholy alliance only works if both coexist at the same time. This contradiction in theology and ideology can only continue if the people won't point out their hypocrisy.
Well said, young man. Thank you for listening to the Shattered Planet podcast. All of our news stories and more can be found on our open Facebook group, Shattered Planet. You can find all of our socials in the description box below. And remember to subscribe and follow our channel so you don't miss the latest stories from around the UK and abroad. Stay vigilant and stay safe.
In the dark of the night, a city in despair, whispers in the alley, secrets fill the air. A shattered planet where the truth is hard to find, mysteries unraveling, leaving scars behind. Shattered planet where the shadows breed, crimes unsolved, a never-ending need. Rocking the headlines, the stories untold. Welcome to the chaos, the darkness unfolds.